It's 1999 all over again. The Tony Hawk 1 and 2 HD remake came out on Friday, and I've been playing it constantly since. Is it everything I'd hoped for, or is it like that other remake that we don't talk about? It's weird being in the exact target demographic for this, having grown up with the original games as a teenager, and being an adult with my own kids now. Coming down that first ramp of the warehouse did feel oddly comforting. Maybe it's because this stage has been recycled in more games than I dare count, but it felt like home. I was also quickly reminded that I'm not very good at Tony Hawk games. They were always something I really enjoyed until about the halfway point, where I suddenly and brutally realised I couldn't keep up with the difficulty curve or score requirements. I'd then watch friends practically make art as they zoomed gracefully around the arenas, racking up combos into the hundreds of thousands of points. I could respect their ability, but I was unable to replicate it. Thankfully, this was the game to finally change that for me. It could be that I'm older, it could be that the game actually involves a surprisingly decent tutorial this time, and part of it could be that the series' gameplay has changed and evolved since those initial entries, possibly even increasing input windows. And half of these maps weren't originally designed with combo lines that can flat out abuse manual flatlands and wall kicks in mind. I'm only slightly ashamed to say that I cheesed a few of the 6 scores, but to the developers' credit, they did change the high score requirements to be much higher in recognition of the expanded combo potential. They've also added new objectives to appeal to multiple player types. Looking at the THPS1 side, we originally had 5 objectives per stage. The remake double stat to 10. Every stage now has 4 score objectives. High, pro, and 6 scores accompanied by a high combo target. The other 6 are then divided up between collecting things and doing specific tricks over certain gaps. This means those of us who have historically been, let's say, not so great at producing an amazing string of flips, grabs, and grinds, still have plenty of ways to progress, while the jaw-dropping, multi-million point single-line wizards can happily exhibit their mastery. Bloody show-offs. Maybe it's the 3D platformer in me, but I'm definitely a bigger fan of the collectathon side of things. There's something inherently satisfying about finally grabbing a secret tape after taking way too many attempts at it. The objectives are also better communicated, with a camera panning over the goals at the start of a level. That said, I still had plenty of instances where I jumped the same gap or grinded the same rail multiple times with different button combinations trying to figure out what the bloody hell a 5-0 was. I did reach a point where I suddenly realised I couldn't make a lot of jumps and started struggling to finish objectives. I feared I was hitting that ceiling from my youth and I'd only be able to play and enjoy about half of the game. That's where the other collectibles, stat points, really came into play. There are up to 4 of these hidden in each level, and you can use them to improve your skater's performance. I'd strongly recommend focusing on speed and ollie first to make navigating the stages that much easier. Being a remake of the first 2 games, when I hit a wall in THPS1, I was able to hop over to 2's levels and start earning stat points there instead. When I came back to the levels I'd been struggling with, I suddenly found myself clearing gaps that had previously been impossible with relative ease. Maybe a more skilled player won't need to use the stat points like a crutch, but in my case they were an absolute necessity for finishing the game. I still hit a roadblock though, the competitions. You get free heats to impress the judges, and I quickly noticed the scoring mechanisms are fairly obtuse and my results were inconsistent. My opponent's scores were also seemingly randomized, changing from attempt to attempt. It's not clear what will get me a gold medal. There's no exploration to fall back on here, you need to get good or never experience the rest of the game. Thankfully, this is the game where things finally clicked for me and I managed to pull off some decent feats. You usually only need a bronze in each of these to progress to the next level, and those are fairly easy to obtain. The sole exception seems to be Tony Hawk 2's final level, Chopper Drop, which requires gold medals in all 3 of the game's contests. Getting to that stage is going to be a very long and potentially frustrating road for me. I also noticed this game isn't set in the 90s, the skaters are returning to these locations in the modern day. The mall's been abandoned and has fallen into ruin, a stark contrast to its previous clean and shiny appearance. It's a social commentary and surprise that I was taken aback by, but wasn't overly fond of. Areas like the school are more subtle by replacing the music videos on the big screen with messages thanking students for their cooperation during the current pandemic. While the music videos are gone, most of the old tracks are still here and accounted for. although I can't play any of them because this is YouTube. They're even accompanied by several new songs. Sadly, personal favourites like Psycho Vision are missing, but the Tony Hawk franchise has always had one of the best licensed soundtracks of any game series. It's to the point that this, Attitude Era Wrestling, and Burnout's Free and Revenge are probably responsible for 90% of my music tastes. It remains to be seen how Tony Hawk's 1 and 2 HD fares for longevity. As I said, I started playing it after work on Friday, and I finished it late Saturday afternoon. I still have some cleanup to do, a few objectives I haven't tamed, those damn gold medals to pursue, but I've definitely had my main course already. Naturally, I could run through it again as one of the other skaters, of which there's a healthy selection. There are a bunch of challenges to unlock, and there's a ranked scoring and speedrun mode to play with. There's online multiplayer that I surprisingly did okay in, but I think the bulk of this game's future is in the Creator Park mode. This is basically Mario Maker but Tony Hawk, and people are already building roller coasters in it. With the right community, you could potentially play new courses indefinitely. For the £33.85 I paid, I'm very happy with what I got. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got a high score to beat. Thanks for joining me on this one. It's been a very different experience getting a video together so soon after a game's release when I usually talk about much older games. I guess this being a remake sort of puts it in this weird area where it might appeal to my audience? I certainly hope so anyway. If you liked what you saw, please like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, and most importantly, share the video with a friend or three.